I had a guy last week that I was visiting up in Virginia tell me that at one point he stopped me and told me I used like 3 times in one sentence. So now I'm trying to, first of all, I'm dismayed that at my age, somehow the word like has crept into my
I've caught
rhythm.
myself recently doing the same.
What the hell with that? And then
I hate it.
so now I'm trying
Like I hate it.
I like it. Now I'm like really like.
Like.
Trying to do. What's something that you read or saw, heard about here just today or in the last few days that in the news or somewhere that made you say, what the heck is going on with this country? Can you think of anything?
There's a lot. That's a pretty open question.
All right, I'll pick one.
Well,
go ahead.
Well, I actually heard on a podcast today, and I was actually it was a video, but I was only listening to the audio portion, you know. So
Yeah.
he actually had the link for this, and I've got to go back and find the link and look for it. But he said that in 1949, when the current Chinese government communist regime started,
Right.
that they announced then that their goal was in 100 years to take over America. And they are now saying, he gave a guy named Michael Pillsbury, who used to be what was called a China dove. He was one of the guys who brought us back into relationships with
Hawks and Doves.
And he said, man, I think he said in 2015 he came out, he said, I was wrong. He said, not only was their goal to take over America in 1949, they're now saying that they're going to be able to take us down much sooner.
Oh, well, how many years we got? Let's see, 49. This is 20.
That's 25 years.
We got 25 years left. I mean that.
They got time.
Let's see.
We don't.
I'll be 80 something.
See, I don't. I'm like you. I don't. I'm at that age where, but I got 5 grandkids, and that's what really bothers me.
You got to care about them. They take us down in 100 years. He's leaving.
Why?
Are you coming back? Do you think most people have any idea?
No, they don't. They have no idea.
Because it's not like it hasn't. I mean, this is not the.
But it's out there. It's out there. If you do the research, it's out there.
I mean, they put lead in our baby toys for a while before we stopped that shit. You know, like
Yeah.
There's been a lot of things over the years that you could say. Right.
The sheer number, I wish I could remember the quote, just a little bit on China. I wish I could remember the quote. It would be better, but my brother-in-law is in the Naval Reserves, and I was asking him, you know, what are your thoughts on, this is a couple months ago, like, what are your thoughts on Russia, Ukraine, where that's at, Israeli, Hamas? And he's like, it's all about China. Everything we talk about is China, China, China. And the sheer number, like even if you look at like we're saying we're the best of the best, we have the best of the best, but if you look at just the sheer number of even, you know, carriers, super carriers to ours, it's
military,
across the board, their military is
it's huge,
vastly more than what we offer.
With one purpose in mind.
With one purpose, and getting more organized. I have heard, I think it was the Air Force, Admiral, I don't know, not Admiral, who's the top of the Air Force? He made a comment on one of the
probably
shows.
Rear Admiral. I always thought I wouldn't want to be a Rear Admiral.
No, that's Navy. Okay. So
They have Air Force. Sorry.
Yeah, anyway, they're still, from what they're saying, they're getting more organized, but they have a ways to go. They're not as advanced as we may think.
Right. But all this stuff that you said a second ago, Ukraine, Hamas, like everything, it's all really about China.
Yeah. No, he's not saying. He's not saying China's like the common denominator.
He's saying like, those are all distractions.
We don't even talk
Forget about
that.
all those.
China is what we focus on.
Trev, you want to give us a China?
I did hear.
Wait, one more time.
China.
Did you ever see that video that the compilation somebody put together of Trump? All the times he said
yeah.
China, 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 China.
That's funny.
He might have been onto something.
Actually, do you remember the movie Red Dawn?
Oh,
The
yeah.
original Red Dawn.
one.
Okay,
That was
but
crazy.
okay, then they did the second Red Dawn, and the invader was
The first one was Russia.
The first one was Russia, but the invader in the second one I think was North Korea. You know who it was originally supposed to be? China.
China, yeah.
And the Chinese government actually
the
got
phone
it.
company
They
decided
got it. They got it. They had to go back in and redub a whole bunch of stuff.
Funny.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
No, we don't like this slander.
All right. Okay.
I would say one. I didn't catch the entire quote. I was just kind of walking out, but I saw a little blurb that Biden said either today or yesterday that he'll shut down the border once he feels like we're getting overwhelmed. Think about that.
Okay.
Think about that for a
That's
little bit. Yeah.
that's an interesting approach to birth control.
Yeah. Once
Yeah.
we feel like it's a real problem,
Once
we're
we're
overwhelmed, then we'll stop. We'll work on
we're-
prevention.
Then we'll work on prevention.
But you know, the reason for open borders is so that they can move more voters into the country for all their unpopular ideas, and to give them a dependent people, and not only to give them a
Maybe it's
dependent
the second
people.
one even more so than the first.
Well, but it goes farther than that. But who pays for the dependent people? You and me pay for the dependent people, and the whole purpose is for the weight of the poor to collapse the middle class system.
I'm with you on that. I think that's another. We'll get derailed on that one.
You were-
but that's
You're wanting to talk about pregnancy and marriage, I think.
yeah. Didn't want to talk about that. Okay, here's the thing. Here's the thing that I saw. I saw this just today, and this is actually not a news article. This was some comedian on social media. Which now that you know, if social media has helped anybody in the world, it has helped the comic industry. Like, there's so many comedians out there now that would probably never have a platform, never have, they'd be like hustling their way through basement clubs in Portland or something, and
Stand up at a Church's Chicken grand opening.
that's right. and now they got it.
Subway.
So this guy, he was talking about, and since we're not too far from Christmas yet, he was talking about this whole hullabaloo of the song "Baby It's Cold Outside." Remember, this blew up a couple years ago. Did you catch that when everybody was all up in arms about "Baby It's Cold Outside" sounding like a date rape?
Oh, no, I didn't get that. No.
She's like trying to leave, and he keeps trying to say, no, just stay, come on, right?
Well, I've been a date rape fan proponent for a long time, so it was a big blow when they decided to go after that.
So well, and then
I have to clarify, just that was a joke.
yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah,
It's out there.
We don't need a strike on YouTube. And of course, the misunderstanding is that people today don't understand is there was this thing that people used to do with each other, that women used to do, right? Called like playing hard to get. Or trying to be a little coy, or, there was this sort of like cat and mouse thing that people used to do in romance that nobody does anymore, because now it's just a matter of like checking the boxes on the dating app and figuring out if, do you have all the things that I want, right? So that's what's really happening.
Check their family medical history,
Yeah. So that's what's really happening in that song. But forget about that, right? Forget about that. This guy he said, all right, so there's this song, "Baby's Cold Outside." Everybody's up in arms. People don't like it because they say it sounds a little rapey. And he said, and then he points out that I don't know how long this has been, just sometime in the last few years, I guess, the number one song in America on several different charts or radio stations or whatever was this one particular song that I can't say the title of it because
Pretty graphic.
we try to be at least a little bit like a family-friendly show here. But the initials were WAP, And he said, now what I want to do, this was the number one song in America for some period of time. He goes, what I want to do is I'm going to read alternating lyrics from Baby It's Cold Outside and this song. And then like, you tell me like what has happened to our country. And of course
It's not good.
It's not good. It's not good. Like most of what it says in that song, I wouldn't even say in a bar conversation with guys.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, like I can hang in a locker room conversation with the best of them, but even then it's still like I don't know.
Yeah. Like, and the worst that Trump has ever said is nothing compared to what's in that song. And so he goes, our country is screwed because we're up in arms about this song, and somehow this other song is played on. Anyway, that was my moment.
I think that's a good barometer. I think it really is a good barometer just to show you how. I mean, what would you say, Baby It's Cold Outside? 52, 55, somewhere around there, middle of 40s.
I think maybe it was first recorded in the 40s. Yeah, maybe in the 40s.
I mean, yeah, Trevor, work your magic.
Because then
what is that? 80 years.
Isn't there a Billie
1944.
Yeah, so 80 years.
There's a Billie Holiday version of it, right? So that would have been.
Am I doing my math right? 80.
80 years, yeah.
So in 80 years, you can see the decline. I mean, not only would I not necessarily use much of that talk track or language in that song amongst my friends, I guarantee you they wouldn't have in 1944.
No.
So to see how far this thing has fallen, just as one little example.
Even you and me. I mean, Russell wouldn't because he's more genteel than both of us, but
he's a gentleman and a scholar.
But certainly we would not. Like, all right. Enough of that. Today's topic. I had this thought when I thought about the three of us being here, and it was one of those rare times when I figured out who the guests were before I figured out what the topic was going to be. And I thought, okay, what are we going to talk about? And I've been reading some stuff lately that made me kind of think about this a little bit. And so to cut to the chase, the thing I want to consider today is what's wrong with just getting married? What's wrong with getting married? And the subtext to that is there's all these modern ideas that have been like in the last, certainly since, I don't know, certainly for the last 30 years, probably more than that. There's all these modern ideas. You know, first it was about how to kind of optimize society and when people and as people grow up and what they ought to do and how do you, and when do you get married and how do you and should you have a family and da da da. And so for a long time, during the Fringe generation, it was very much like, well, you need to learn if you're going to be compatible with the other person, so you need to live together first, and that actually turned out to not work very well. And then more recently, I was reading an article about how the new barometer for have you really reached adulthood yet is living on your own without the need for any roommates and being independent and having your own place, and you need to do. And meanwhile, like people are getting, I said like, I got to. It's like throw a flag.
The one that I don't care for more than like is right.
Right?
I do have a few people that say right after every
too many times.
Way too many.
Too many times. We should do an episode on linguistic pet peeves.
This, that, would, and like, or they're neck and neck, but right.
Right? Meanwhile, people are getting married later and later. I think the most recent thing I saw says it's right around 30 years old for your first marriage. And I think if you look at the demographics, that's actually brought down a little bit by rural areas, which are still more or less getting married at an earlier age. But if you look into like urban or suburban areas, it's even older than that. And if you can go. You can do a quick online search and you can find all sorts of prognostication about the optimizing of, when is the right time to do and should people, all this stuff about. And I started thinking like, what about just what was wrong when kids grew up and they got married and they figured it out. They had a family, and like it wasn't perfect circumstances, but that was what happened. Like you grew up together, as opposed to now everybody wants to grow up first and figure out I figure out how my life is and all my things, and then we'll figure out if our parts fit together and how that's going to work and which bank accounts we're going to use and da 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 da. So the three of us, I think, all did it more or less the old-fashioned way, where at a fairly young age we got married, had a family, and all our kids are all grown now, and almost you're almost empty.
Almost empty.
You almost. It's real. I got to tell you, it's really great.
We've got enough of a taste of it that we're like, we like this.
Yeah,
It's back to the original deal.
Yeah, it's fun.
Well, it was especially fun for us because we didn't have an original deal. So, because our first baby came so fast that there was no we never got to.
Yeah, I'm with you.
I mean, I've had to worry about wearing clothes around my own house pretty much, my entire life.
Yeah,
So
no more.
yeah,
No more.
So
Like, sorry.
so what? So what? How did this? Well, first of all, let's start here. Well, you were young, right? How old were you guys? When you got married? You were like,
I was, and I'm. Hopefully, this will get edited. Probably most of what I'm going to say about this subject will get edited out.
no, we don't.
Because you have what's I think you have what's considered I think you have what's considered a politically incorrect audience. I would be politically incorrect to your politically incorrect audience.
Yeah, no,
That's how
okay.
politically incorrect I am.
You don't have to be.
We're taping this in January. In December last month, I turned 66 years old. And I got married, and it wasn't a shotgun marriage. I didn't have to. Okay,
Was this before the big war or after?
I got actually I was
specify.
I'm called that generation who knew no war. I turned 18 years old in 1975. Which was the year Nixon brought the troops home. And by the time it was all set, or the year before, anyway, I didn't even have to register for the draft. They had that period of time where you didn't even didn't even have to register for the draft. But I got married August the 1st, and I turned 18 years old on December the 11th.
Wow.
Nice.
That's how they did it back in them times.
No, that was the exception to the rule. That was a little aggressive by then. Yeah.
You're still married to the same person.
Yes.
And she's a woman.
Yeah, right.
And we're sure she's a woman. There's not any confusion about it.
You're not going to believe this. I had when you get 66, you have to finally break down and go to the doctor. And I went in. It may have been December. It was either November or December, and one of the top-notch board-certified doctors in the medical center of Houston. And he asked me, "Was I married?" And his next question was, I'm trying to remember how he said, "Are you the husband or the wife?" And I said, "What?"
Well, I didn't want to say anything, Russell, but sometimes it's a little hard to tell.
Going back to that.
Yeah. So, I mean, you were young, right? Reasonably,
Youngish.
Not as young. You were in your 20s.
Yes.
Yeah. And
Yeah, I had a little bit of a run to kind of see what.
like from the law?
No, like in your 20s, where you had a little bit of play
Sow
time.
your wild oats.
Yeah, a little bit of the sowing your oats kind of thing. Nothing crazy, but a little bit there. But I would assume that, and yes, still married, and we went through definitely our ups and downs. But I would assume that some of that, the reasoning that maybe the new data is showing wait until you get a little later in life or don't get married at all, is because there's so many kids that have come from broken homes where the marriage didn't work, and they got to experience divorce and see it, and, I don't know. But
Well, and that's being normalized now, but there's clear data that shows that has an impact on kids' education.
oh, hell yeah.
and
Yeah,
all that
absolutely.
kind of
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
I think to your point, it would be nice if there would be more of a movement on just getting the family unit stronger and back together. I mean, I can assure you that I would not be where I'm at or who I am today if it weren't for my wife. I mean, I promise you. Like,
She agrees with you, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, you need that kind of growing up. And I think just like you said, can you imagine marrying someone when you're about 40 and you've already got all your shit figured out and she's got her stuff and now you're trying to figure out how we make this work?
No.
That's 6 years tops. Like done. and you
I
move
actually
on.
just talked to a guy here first part of this year who did exactly that, and he was telling me how rough the first 4 or 5 years were before.
I can't imagine. You're so ingrained in
used
how
to be,
you're doing
like,
your thing.
The way we all did it was you actually grew up together.
Right? Yes.
Like that was part of so now you become something that takes on its own characteristics. Why? And I guess the thing that makes me wonder is, and I have to confess, I'm a little intimidated by Russell and his yellow pad over there. Nobody's ever come so prepared.
I know.
for this. And you're like,
This is supposed to be saving the dream life in America. I came prepared to talk about open borders, invasions, Tucker Carlson, the great taking away, China, the whole 9 yards. And you say we got to talk about marriage.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Trevor, what do you think? Should we just veer off into all of that, or should we stay to the topic? What?
I'm not sure.
But you're the boss. You're supposed to tell us what to do.
You're right. The boss doesn't get paid.
Okay, I'm gonna work some magic now and tie all that together. What is it? Why? So you got all these kids out there now, and by kids I mean, they're legally adults, but they haven't. They're still trying to figure out.
They still have like
life
a soft spot
in the back of their head. Yeah.
It hasn't formed yet.
And we're like, damn it, I did it again. Like, and we are,
Right.
And we're throwing all this at them. There's all this. It just seems like we're making it so complicated. Like.
I haven't even noticed until you pointed
Can't
it
say it. We're making it. To me, it feels like overthinking it. It's just not that complicated. This is how I see it. Like, it's not that it's not that complicated. And we got married. I turned 22 a couple of days before we got married. First baby came pretty fast. Don't count the weeks. And I was completely unprepared. I didn't have any kind of
hell yeah.
I had gone to college a couple times, like for a few days, and I didn't really have any marketable skills, and I didn't have anything that was like a real job. I may still not. And I didn't have, at that point in time. Now this is back in 1988, which of course your kids were already grown by then, but
we actually waited on that a little while. I think we were 5 years into it before my wife came and said we had to have kids, and I said, why do we have to have kids? And she said, we have for our old age. So my kids
That's why? Okay.
Yeah, my kids found that out, and now every time I do something they don't like, they threaten me with what nursing home they're going to put me in. So.
I really thought that sentence was going to say, and then my wife came and told me, there's something that we're supposed to be doing that we're not doing. So is that the thing? So you had kids? Well, so we were not in any way, shape, or form prepared to like live adult family life with children. Not only did we not have really any reliable source of income. I was basically doing I got the $5 an hour job now, and I'm looking for the $6.50 an hour. Yeah,
$5.25.
Yeah, what happens if I work a little extra hours? Yes. So we were by no measure prepared, but that was 36 years ago, and we just figured it out because that was what you did. That was just what you did. There wasn't any reason to abandoned ship. Like, this is what we're doing now, so this is how we're figuring it out. There seems to be a very different mentality now. The mentality now, to me, seems to be much more inward, like self-focused. Like, this is what I want for my life, and now let me see how that fits with somebody else, which was not the way we although they call Gen X the me generation, but I'm not sure I really agree with that. I'm kind of in the middle. I'm right between the boomers and the Gen X, but I don't know. What do you think?
Well, going back to being politically incorrect.
Yeah.
Okay. I think it was a religious thing.
Yeah.
They did. I don't know if Trevor can find this or not. And when you get as
He can find very little.
When you get as old as I am, you lose track of time. But there was actually a Newsweek.
Russell, you're only 10 years old. You're 9 years older than me. Don't make it sound like it's that old.
There was a Newsweek article a few years ago, and I don't remember how many years ago, but they were talking about this very same topic, and they interviewed one guy who was in his 30s and he hadn't gotten married yet, and he said, if in order to have sex I had to get married, I'd already be married. But you don't have to get married to have sex anymore.
Yeah, that's true.
And that was now we, none of us were perfect or whatever. But I mean, let's face it. The bottom line was, for the most part, us guys were going after the gals, and they were fending us off. And you didn't, what's that old expression? Why do you have to buy the cow if the milk's free? I mean, if you wanted to have regular, consistent sex, you had to get married.
Yeah. Otherwise, it was problematic.
And now,
right.
It's not. I mean, you're Catholic.
Yeah.
Marriage is considered a sacrament.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Okay. It's not and I tell you something else. For the most part, there was a show on TV back in the I guess 90s, and it depicted some town back in the 30s or 40s or whatever, and it was fairly historically accurate and that sort of thing. But one of the characters came to town, and he kind of fell in love with this gal, and then she found out he was divorced.
Oh.
And
I don't remember this. Do you remember this?
It was
TV show?
It was a TV show, and I can't. But there was a certain stigma to divorce in say, the 30s, 40s, and 50s.
Oh yeah.
And when you
More so if you were the woman. I mean, it was a little unfair in that way.
Well, yeah, because but I mean, when you got married, you got married. I mean, divorce wasn't an option.
Yeah,
that's another reason. People don't want to make the commitment.
Yeah. Well. Yeah.
Yeah, and I like everything you said there. I agree with it. I saw a stat once, it's fairly high, like the success of shotgun wedding or arranged weddings, certainly in India.
Oh, yeah. It's pretty good.
It's really good.
Yeah.
It's really good. And I remember seeing an interview with they had grandkids. It was an older Indian couple, and they were talking honestly about and openly about, I didn't know him, I didn't know her, but I know that we were going to make this work. And you grow up and you become to love the other one. And I think there's a lot to that. I think it's fairly.
Don't do it in the Sudrati accent. I don't want to. We're gonna get in trouble.
Honestly.
So no, another aspect of that with in cultures like in India is that it's not just the couple. There's the very intense pressure from the families and the culture to stay together and make it work, whether you like it or not. And that's something we're missing in America. Is
we don't like that though anymore as a society. We don't like having an obligation.
Right. So now, like, you're missing. Parents are more, you can, grow up and do what you want,
right,
and we're not going to judge you.
Now there are exceptions to the rule. Okay, and some people are out there already saying, they're already,
Sure, yeah.
I mean, a woman shouldn't stay in a relationship, with an abusive alcoholic husband who's beating the crap out of her every night. Those are, I mean, they're
or the other way around. Just ask Johnny Depp.
Yeah. There are exceptions to the rule, but when you got a 50%, that's roughly what they say these days. 50% divorce rate or whatever. That's not. That just has to do with people. Just what you said. They're not willing to work it out.
Well, but I think there's a different. So the conventional wisdom says, well, that's why we need to have all of these. We need to figure this out. What am I trying to say? So instead of saying the problem is just people, you grow up, you get married, you have a family, you figure it out, you work together. It's a commitment. It's a commitment to you. It's a commitment to your community. It's a commitment to because as a family unit, you are the building block of society. So if that building block falls apart, it in reality it impacts more people than just you.
Surprising.
If it happens at scale,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, but instead, the modern thinking says, well, that's why we need to have some sort of elaborate way to figure out, to make sure that if you do get married, you're absolutely marrying the right person who's perfectly compatible. And that's why, right? To me, it feels like you're solving the problem the wrong way, right? The problem isn't to diagnose the matchup up front. The problem is to change. The solution is to change the way people think about life and who they put first in their life and where their priorities are.
Well, there's a reason why the institution of marriage goes back to time immemorial.
Yeah.
And so and again, I come. I know people don't want to hear this.
You can say however you want.
To me, it comes back to the religious aspect, and in my faith, God established marriage, and was very clear about it. I mean, it's in the book of Genesis. Therefore, shall a man leave his mother and father and cleave to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. Jesus repeated it when they asked him about marriage. God intended for us to live in a society as families. And I read a statistic the other day. There's some places that the illegitimacy rate is 70-something% or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
This is in the and it's in these communities where you hear them every weekend about how many people got shot that weekend and that sort of thing. I had a guy tell me and he was a black guy, and he was bemoaning in his own culture the disintegration of the family and how that was affecting society, like you said.
Yeah.
He said back when our families were together, he said we couldn't go 3 blocks down the road and throw a rock out the window because Auntie so and so was back there and she tan our hides.
Yeah.
And now there's no, you go 3 blocks down, there's no aunts, there's no uncles, there's no fathers, there's no families.
There's a whole thing about the extended family, like anthropologically, the way the extended family plays into
And
this.
that all
Takes a village
is
to raise
in
a
marriage,
kid kind of
you
thing.
know?
Yeah, that's the basic building block of the whole thing. Yeah, I just don't. What I can't figure out is, well, I shouldn't say I can't figure out. I'm kind of saying this rhetorically because I think I know the answer. Why as a society are we trying to do every which way some other thing than the thing that fundamentally works?
Then the thing that fundamentally works, or the source of it.
Right.
It's here's the recipe,
We-
and we're trying to spin all this other stuff to
Yeah.
try to make it work.
Why do we
the
do that?
recipe's here?
Yeah,
it's religious. We don't believe in God anymore. We don't believe he's got the answers.
So while I don't disagree with you, in one way, if I look at it purely objectively, I would say, okay, but that basic building block of a family with children, whatever form of the marriage. So you said marriage goes back time immemorial. You make me sound like my Sicilian relatives. It's always been this way. It's time immemorial. And actually, I did a little reading on this one time, and there's a lot of different. The way that marriage has played out in different cultures,
Has been different,
historically,
right.
is changes. But there's always been this notion that there's some sort of formality, right? Some sort of legality where people come together. And that's what they do, and it was accepted as a thing, as the thing that you do, even in societies and cultures which had nothing to do with the Christian religion. So as like humans, damn it, I said it again. I said as humans, we have that. Whatever you believe about religion, we have this. Like you said, here's the recipe. It has worked, and right now we're doing our damnedest to do anything else but that, especially the younger generation. What do you think,
Too
Trev?
many options.
You're the younger generation. Why are we so obsessed with doing anything except the thing that?
Well, then you get told you're doing it wrong. You made a comment, not to cut off Trevor. I want to give Trevor his moment.
He's
in the
secondary.
sun here, but you brought it up earlier about the doing it right. I forgot what the hell I was going to say. I saw Trevor. Trevor,
He makes you
help
lose
me.
your memory.
That's
a
what
lot.
happened. So, okay, I don't have kids, nor am I married. So I'm speaking at ignorance here. But
But you're contemplating the whole thing. I mean,
Yeah, you have a girlfriend.
you're looking.
yeah.
So you're on the cusp.
Valentine's
Yeah,
Day.
so
You're on the
everything, my future depends on y'all three right now. So don't mess up too much, okay?
You can take it to the bank.
How
Success.
I see it is, it's probably the greatest responsibility that an individual can have is to have a family, is to get married and then raise other humans and develop them correctly. So
His kids are going to be interesting.
Unlike how your parents did it, right?
Have you
Trevor?
been
Right.
Have you been correctly developed? Let me correct you.
well, that's what it is. It's
No, but you're
the
right.
Humans that
You're showing a lot of
people
wisdom in
that
what
you
you're
see
saying.
and that you interact with, like there are other people responsible for that. It's not just when animals are born, when a deer is born, they come out and they're going looking for berries. It's like they get 2 minutes to breathe and then they got to move. But we're responsible for forming other humans.
Yeah.
So
Trevor, let me ask you, do you think this is, I like everything you're saying. Do you think that's a common view amongst your age? Or do you think that's your view? Do you think you're an outlier? I would say you're an outlier.
it's not. It is growing. It is uncommon. It's becoming more uncommon. But it's really it doesn't matter what your opinion is. I'm just setting up the facts of it and what
Yeah.
is the truth. Opinions aside, this is just what's observable and what is actually happening. So then I think where the subjective nature of it comes in is when people realize that it's a great responsibility, and being in America, the whole notion of freedom, to the extent that we have, I think has kind of intercepted the younger generations or the older generations who said, I'm going to work so then my kids don't have to work, or it's easier for them.
You're welcome.
And something, yeah, thanks. Every day I wake up. But it's, so then an easier life is less responsibility. So then kids, as they get older, carry that with them, and then they want to try and avoid that responsibility because they were raised to avoid that.
Yeah. But I think there's another part of it, which is it's not just the avoiding responsibility, but I think there's something that has permeated the culture, which
Yes.
I think comes from exactly what you're saying, which is not having to face
Right.
responsibility.
So we have that. It's a responsibility, but there's nothing keeping people accountable for those responsibilities. To Russell's point, is we don't have God or any
That
sort
goes
of
back to a God.
to God, yeah. But
any sort of because as I said before, just humans create and raise other humans. There's nothing greater than that. When a dog makes a mistake, there's a greater being there to correct them and punish them for that or hold them accountable. But in the we
not
have
that it did any good with our dogs.
we have police and government and such, but
yeah.
that's just still other humans. There's
We just
nothing
need the
holding us
government more in our
accountable.
business.
We need more government. That's
more
what we need.
government to fix it.
So
Get more humans.
But I think, there's an interesting.
To redefine the definition of marriage.
Yeah,
Yeah, what I was going to say real quick, I mean, you just shared in the article, this is where I was going earlier before Trevor's brilliance. Where the article you had shared or that you read was now defining some version of success being kids just getting out of their parents' home and living on their own.
Yeah, and or like not only with roommates. So the first step is like roommates,
Yes.
but it's kind of like a badge of
But just
honor.
think
when
about that.
You don't have to have roommates anymore.
Think about that.
Yeah.
It just goes more to like
Yeah.
twisting the,
Like-
it's okay.
Like
It's
I had to
okay.
feed humans.
Yes.
And
Yes,
yeah.
exactly.
But there's a thing that's developed that I think is really interesting, and I think it comes from what you're saying about not having any hard responsibilities or any accountability. But there's also like there's this mentality that that I each as an individual, and it's funny that you said that about freedom, Trev, because we have like a really warped sense of freedom and liberty right now. I think that gets into the rest of Russell's list over there, but it's almost now where the main thing for me to worry about in my life is me as an individual. How do I feel fulfilled? Am I living? It's all about. I went to school and I got a degree so that I could have a career, so that I could do something that's important to me, so that I could be fulfilled, so that I could be. And I'm assembling all the parts of this is who I am, and I'm figuring out who I am. Now that I'm me, now we'll figure out. Now I'll decide to what degree to. What relationships am I going to have, or who am I going to have over, or where am I going to socialize, or how am I going to interact with other people, which is a really different way of thinking than how.
Because what I hear a lot is that
It's a different frame of mind. You know what I mean?
what I hear a lot is that people have freedom and they want freedom to do what they want, but my thinking is that's not what freedom is. Freedom is it's not to do what you want, however you want, but it's to do what you want within a guide or within a framework. Because
Well, you have
just like sports, you have chess and such, which is considered a sport. which is
chess. Where are you going?
What's a game?
Well, in chess, it's a lot of creativity, a lot of strategy. It's near infinite, the strategies and creativity, but there are still the pieces
you gotta
move
like
a certain
work within
way.
this. Yeah.
Yeah.
So-
if you let me talk, then I'll.
I
I'll
don't
get
have this
there.
kind of time. We're running out of
We got to save room for all your likes and.
like. So it's different from, Okay, so Russell, when you were 13 and you got married or whatever you were back before the Great War, what were you thinking about in terms of were you thinking about who am I and who do I want to be, and I'm gonna bet not.
Well,
As a young person, I'll frame it this way: why did you get married
okay.
and sacrifice all that freedom?
Oh yeah, there you go.
Freedom.
Well, I'm probably not the guy to ask that question. Okay.
But you're the only one here, so we're asking.
Yeah. So, but it had to do with the way I was raised. That was one thing. I was never allowed to be a kid. I always had to be 10 years older than I was, and that sort of thing. And I had to act like an adult and all that sort of thing. And in fact, it's funny, 2 or 3 Christmases ago, one of the last times my mother was at my house, we had the grandkids over. And of course, they're just, I mean, it's just as chaotic as could be.
Right.
And it's driving my mother crazy, And I just looked at her and I said, Mom, my house, my rules.
Yeah.
This is it. But for me, getting
Well, she's slowing up and she can't catch you anymore.
yeah, right,
So-
right, yeah, exactly. But self-esteem for me was in being grown up, and being married meant you were grown up. Now I know that doesn't apply to anybody out there listening to this, so don't. Don't.
Well,
don't
but that
think
was-
But the second thing,
Yeah,
and the second thing was, and I hate to say it again. And of course, my wife's dad was a minister. My father was a minister, so we were, raised in very strict religious homes, and
That
I had
you quoting the entire second chapter of Genesis.
yeah, right. But I mean,
impressed.
quite frankly, I don't know if you're supposed. Maybe you'll
Whatever
edit
you
this
want.
out.
It doesn't matter.
I had a strong sex drive, and I'm like most other red-blooded American guys, right? And again, I go back to the Newsweek article. Guy said, "Look, if that's the only way I could get sex, I'd get married." But it's not. That's not the way it is these days. But for me, that was the legitimate way to do it. And I do want to say though, I'm all for premarital counseling. I'm all for being very careful about the choice you make in your spouse and that sort of thing. I'm not trying to, I mean, let's anything we can do to make it better, to not have to go through some of the struggles that sometimes we have to go through because,
Sure.
Maybe if I'd have known this about you, I might have looked somewhere else, or whatever, So, and then I guess the other thing that I would say, and there's actually a website out there, it's www.savemymarriage.com.
Yeah.
But their whole premise of the thing is, you talk about because my wife and I have done marriage counseling and that sort of stuff. We've also been counseled, trust me.
Yeah.
But what happens is when they get ready to get a divorce, they come to you and you say, why do you want to get a divorce? And it's always, there are exceptions. I don't want to, people out there, my husband's beating the crap out of me. But in a normal situation, it's always because I don't love him anymore or I don't love her anymore.
We fell out of love.
We fell out of love. Okay. Yeah. And what this website says is this website says they can teach you how to fall back into love.
Yeah.
Okay. But here's the thing. So when you got married, assuming it wasn't that shotgun marriage, you thought you really loved this person. Okay. And you thought it's going to always be that way. And now you're sitting here saying, oh, I don't love that person anymore. You were wrong, weren't you? Because you thought, I love him, always will. Now, okay, well, now you're sitting here thinking, I don't love him or her, and I never will again. Well, guess what? You can be wrong about that, too.
Yeah, sure.
I like it.
I'm wrong about most things, I think, if you ask. That's what they said we fell out of love?
Yeah. And what was funny is I've talked to other friends, like adult friends, later in life. And they're like, oh, what happened to your parents? I'm like, oh, they fell out of love. And I'm like, oh, they told you the same bullshit.
Yeah.
But one of the things Trevor said, why would you get married and give up all that freedom? I had a little taste of that. I was 28 when I got married. My wife and I dated for about 6 months before we got married. And she had 3 kids. And I gave up that freedom. I had the freedom.
Yeah, you sure did.
But
3 kids already, right?
There was a lot. There's a lot to it. One, I absolutely knew she was the one. I was done. I didn't care about looking anywhere else. I'd had enough of the sowing of the seed that I'm good. And then also just that there's a little bit of the next step, like you know that if you're going to grow, maybe this was subconscious. I don't think I necessarily consciously thought this out, but there is part of that. Like if I'm going to take the next step and grow up, this is it. This is what's going to push me to that next, whomever I am.
So then, to play devil's advocate, why do you need to sacrifice some of that quote unquote freedom and introduce another person into your life, ideally permanently, to grow up like that?
Because there's a lot of crooks and crannies, man. There's a lot of crooks and crannies in your life, your personality, your character that they begin to weave their way into and be like, this needs to change. This needs to, you can do better here. You don't have any confidence here.
That's freedom.
Yeah.
That's what real freedom.
Yeah.
That's
Russell
what real,
gets it.
That's what real. See, it's actually
Nobody gets in there if you don't give them
It's
the
an
time.
invalid question.
But
you're not giving up freedom.
But
Now you're
I thought
giving up-
freedom was to do what you want.
No, see, that's exactly the point. Exactly the point. That's not what freedom is. That's not what fulfillment is.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So, I think the best evidence that what you're saying is true is if you walk around, you don't see a lot of people that look like they're free and fulfilled. It's not. If you look at the people who are living who are pursuing life according to the more modern way of thinking,
And all the physical pleasures.
they are not like baskets of joy, these people, most of the
That's
time.
exactly right.
Yeah. Not at all.
Antidepressant use just increasing.
Yeah.
Yep.
Nicotine
Suicide,
patches.
nicotine,
away.
vape. It's all up. All of it's up.
It's interesting, the thing, Russell, that you said about, which, it feels kind of funny, right? You're like, well, I was like a regular guy. I had a big sex drive. If you think about that, like anthropologically, I need a little blow. I need a little electric buzzer every time.
Every time you say like.
If you think about that anthropologically, and whether you think about it in terms of something evolutionary or something kind of God created, it makes sense if you back up from the fact that this family unit, this nuclear family unit, and then the extended family that is a product of that, is fundamental to society and success and people being, the building block, right? If you back up from that and say, well, therefore, it's to the good of humans that they create those things, those families. And so if you back up from that, it says, well, it sort of makes sense that guys ought to have a sex drive and that the social construct ought to say, no, you can only have this if you're married. Because now that promotes the thing that you need to do to create the basis. So whether you look at it in terms of providentially or evolutionary, whichever frame of mind you come from, that really actually makes really good sense.
Well, and that's actually in the Bible too, 1 Corinthians chapter 7, if anybody wants to know. But
Preacher's kid.
it's not the only I don't want anybody to think we're because I can sit here, people thinking there's much more to it than that.
We don't actually care what people
everything.
think. It doesn't matter.
But there is that aspect to it, and with this modern mindset, they don't tell you the truth. I mean, sexually transmitted diseases in this country are at like an all-time high.
Really?
Nobody ever tells you. Nobody ever tells you that.
No. I keep hearing the divorce rate is falling, but I can't see how that's possible.
Well,
I've heard something similar here recently.
It's lies, damn lies, and statistics.
Yeah.
Part of what there's two things going on, and I've heard this from people who's because of the 70s and the 80s when we start having wholesale divorces and all that sort of thing, and so many kids who
No fault
got
divorce.
married, and they got their parents had been divorced. That was something because of the trauma that they went through as a result of that, they said, there's no way I'm going to put my kids through that.
Yeah.
I've heard that.
So it made him stick to it more.
I've heard that before. The other thing that messes up the divorce rates, what happens is
Slight decline.
What happens is people who get divorced one time, and guess what they do the second time?
Look at what it says right there. Third marriages have the highest.
There you go. Okay, this is
73%.
exactly. So they first of all, they never figured out what the problem was in the first marriage. Okay, so my answer is I'm going to throw this one away. I'm going to go get me another one.
I always like those people that have been like married and divorced 3-4 times.
That's what I'm talking about.
But it's always the other person's fault.
Exactly. Exactly.
At what point do we start to find a common denominator?
Yeah, it's like when you're interviewing somebody for a job and they have all these stories about how their past employers, did this and did that. And
This
that's why,
manager was an ass. This one treated me bad. This was wow. This is like 10 jobs
I had a
in
friend.
a row
I had
where
a friend
you got
who
stuck with a bad manager.
I had a friend whose daughter got a divorce, and she, and of course her dad was very against it when she did. But she came to him a year later. She said, "Dad, I thought getting a divorce was going to solve all my problems."
Yeah.
If I had known how many more problems it was going to, and people don't think about this,
Yeah.
they had joint custody of the kids, so the kids lived, Sunday through Wednesday at mom's house and Wednesday through Saturday at
mess,
dad's house, and they had to have two different, and then wait till you do start having grandkids and all that sort of thing, and now you got a Christmas time, Thanksgiving time, all the holiday, all the birthday you got to split them up with all these. It's a mess.
Not to mention that so all these things are becoming normalized. Being a single parent is when I was a kid. This is why I find it hard to imagine that the divorce rate is falling. I guess I could see a slight decline based on those circumstances. But when I was a kid, almost none of the other kids' parents were divorced. You knew there was one or two that but everybody else, nobody else's parents were divorced. And now it's pretty pervasive, I think, and like you said, there used to be kind of this stigma associated with it, and now there's not anymore.
Exactly.
So, and I'm not.
That's how you go into it. What we were talking about a while ago about how you go into it, and you say, the arranged marriages. We're going to work this.
Yeah, we're going to work.
Now it's. I'll go ahead and marry you, and if it doesn't work out, we'll get a divorce.
Yeah, because it's more seen like a partnership. Yeah. It's more like an arrangement of not an arranged marriage, but it's more like a business partnership where, okay, you've got your parts and I got my parts, and we're gonna,
as long as we're contributing and we both feel like
like a joint venture.
Yeah,
like when two companies do a JV, and what do you?
Once I don't think you're fulfilling your part of the joint venture,
right? This is what you contribute. This is what I contribute. These are the goals that we're working in. Right.
I think that's why the living together isn't very successful ahead of time either. I mean, it's the mindset is different when you're going into it as we're married or we're getting, if you've lived together a little bit before, but marriage is there, your mindset is different than when you're living with a girlfriend. I'm sorry. I lived with a girlfriend.
Yeah.
We didn't get married.
No.
There is a different mindset when I'm committed, I'm going to make this work. Not to say that we didn't have our ups and downs and things get ugly, but you push through. You just fight for it.
Yeah, what if it were okay, we're veering off into something here, because I was about to say, what if
the kids are too important? You can't give up on the kids.
Exactly right.
That's where you got to stop thinking about yourself and how much she pisses you off. You got to think about the kids.
That is exactly right.
So that comes back to my point about
the ripple effect is
it's not
far
about
and wide.
Part of being and you mentioned this, Russell, you said when you were a kid, the mark of being, I forget how you said exactly, but the mark of being grown up was you got married and you had kids. That was very much for everybody until it stopped being that.
For me, Trevor, that was freedom.
Yeah.
Once I got married and I had my own
family.
On home, yeah. I was the head of. Nobody told me what to do after that. I was the.
Yes, there was. It's not just about living on your own, but I have my own family. I make my own rule. My house, my rules.
My house, my rules. Yeah.
But this thing I was reading in the Atlantic was talking about now the mark of adulthood is being able to afford your own place. But really, I think probably the defining characteristic about being a real adult, a real grown up, is when you realize that you're not the most important thing anymore. That you have other people, other things, other responsibilities that take precedence and cut into what you want for yourself. That kind of self-sacrifice. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't really matter whether it comes through being married with a family or some other thing that you decide to do with your life, right? Let's say you decide, in the Catholic world, we have this concept of vocations, right? Let's say you decide I don't feel I want to be married and have a family, but I'm going to go be a missionary or I'm going to do this other thing. The point is, at that point, you're putting yourself and your own interests and what I want and my desire to sit up all night and play video games, you're putting that behind some other good that now you're on the hook for, right?
Marry something.
And the most common way of doing that, the most prevalent way was getting married and having a family, but then there are some other ways that people who decide to be a minister or something, right?
We're sitting here talking about why you don't have to get married, okay? It's not,
No, and the point was why are we now? And the original question was why are we trying? Why is the new crop of humans?
But we're trying to develop relationships.
Why are they trying to do every other thing except the thing that
without,
we just,
right.
Yeah.
And so I think we were talking about this before we started recording. So now the birth rates are down, and that has tremendous social and economic consequences that are coming down the line. And
it's worse in some other countries than here.
Well, back to Russell's notepad, we're going to see it in China first and see what happens.
Yeah. Well, they're not. Yeah, the maternity wars are not overflowing in France right now. They're not having
or any place in Europe.
Yeah.
Just China, or just
China?
I thought France was. I thought they were starting to reproduce more. I saw a thing.
We need is more Frenchmen.
It's an interesting concept on. You need at least 3 or 4 people in the family to keep like a culture of like your family tradition and what that looks like. And as they're not having, and it was about the French. The French are the ones that kind of observed. We're losing our identity.
Oh, so maybe they have
by
picked
not
it up.
having many kids and keeping the family in the village and blah blah blah. But I could be wrong.
Birth rate in France
Down.
1982 to 20. So that's
Maybe I wasn't paying attention.
That's in the last 40 years.
And that pretty much is all over,
What's the
Western
birth
Europe.
rate in Americas? What are we doing?
America.
Are we breeding?
Are we breeding?
I do know that I'm pretty sure we're below replacement.
Yeah, that's not such a bad thing.
No, that is actually.
Well, that's why the borders are open.
That's right. We need more people.
We're gonna fix this.
We're gonna fix this problem.
Yeah, this is it.
I mean, all the ones that are coming over are young and ready to fight.
So we're down.
It's gonna help fix this.
We're down about half from back when Russell was getting married. We're down about half of what we were.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Look at China. What happened? They got.
Well, now they're trying to get.
I don't know. They had some. They were overrun.
They're like socialism's great until somebody's got to pay for it.
Exactly.
Yeah. So then
money runs out.
So then they told everybody they could only have one kid, and now they're in trouble. Now they're trying to get people to have kids again, and the people are saying we don't want to.
All right.
They raised the number of allowed children in a household to 2.
That's
So that's nice.
yeah, that's nice.
Givers.
All right. I think we killed this.
Yeah.
What
I feel like we crushed this.
what's like one really
Trevor,
fun
are
thing
you
on
ready
here?
to get married? Or did we convince you?
I'm
To the
it's-
right person, not
let's-
just anybody.
Well,
This is important. That's like really, really important.
yeah. I'm sold. It's a matter of getting all
You're
the
bought and
parties.
paid for is what you are. Yeah.
It's a matter of getting all the parties on board.
I think so. This thing about the right person, I think sometimes we can.
Oh, I don't think that is real.
I think you can see crazy.
No,
Okay.
the wrong exists.
The-
The
the
wrong
wrong-
person exists, but
Yes.
I think the concept of the right person is
Less wrong.
Fairy tale.
More
Yeah, like,
complimentary.
I don't think
I
there's-
can work with this.
like there's not a specific right person, or I think there are lots of people that you can marry and be happy and be successful, because it's all about who you are and what you do together afterward. But
Strong sex drives help.
that does
But you
Being
do have
ugly,
you do have to work at it, and I can tell you.
right.
And I, by the way, I don't recommend anybody get married 4 months before they turn 18 years old.
why.
Well, because I don't care, and we've all known, young people who were at least appeared to be more mature than they seem to be 4 or 5 years older than they were, and maybe that's true, and maybe I was. I don't care how much older you are at 17, you're still a kid. You're still naive. You're still you're still immature. I don't care how
is it any
mature
better
you
when
are.
you're 21 or
immature.
22?
Well,
I think you're still pretty dumb.
I don't know. You could make
was
you could
dumb at
make you
28.
could make a point for that. But I really believed in this this fairy tale. Cinderella, prince. We're gonna get married and we're gonna all live happily ever after.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the first time you do something that ticks her off, and
I'm still waiting for that.
right, exactly.
waiting for it to come down.
You have to work at it, okay? But it goes. We keep throwing this word freedom around. What's the old cliche? Cliches. Some of them become cliches because they're such truisms. Freedom is not free.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And a successful marriage, you don't. You have to work at it.
Yeah. I don't think.
But it's fulfilling if you do so.
Yep. That's what my wife tells me.
Agreed.
Great. All right, we're Trev. We didn't. Where are we at time wise? The timer wasn't really running. Yeah, we're an hour and 10. We got to wrap up. What's Russell? When you come back, what do you want to talk about from your pad there? We'll tee something up. I feel bad because you had all these things you were ready to talk about and we didn't do any of it. What should we plan for next time?
I think when we mentioned China and you said, are people aware of this?
Yeah.
There is the elites out there, the
I like it
big
when we talk about
pharma, the
elites.
big ag, the big tech, the big bankers.
Yeah.
We're just, I think, so unaware of what they're actually doing to us. And there's a big group out there right now that says their goal is by 2030 that people like you and me, we have nothing and we're supposed to be happy about it.
Oh, that's the World Economic Forum.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And
Bastards. I hate those
and
guys.
I
Yeah.
How do you define nothing?
well,
Plant burgers and bug burgers.
More porridge, sir.
This
Like that level.
that's exactly exactly
They
where
don't want us.
where we're
They don't want
headed.
there to be any privately owned property.
Unless we turn
well,
it
there's
around.
not going to be. China owns all of it.
Yeah.
China and the Saudis.
All right, we're gonna do that next.
I want to. I want to fight, man. I want to turn that around. I
like it.
Yeah. All right.
Faith, family, and freedom is what I'm all about. And
Yeah.
High sex drive.
And it's
And when you lose faith in family,
you're never
which is
gonna live
what
that
we-
down.
You know, when
We
you
have
lose
done.
faith in family, you lose freedom. That's
Yeah.
just, and we've got to turn that around.
I like
I'm
it.
with you. All right, we'll do that next time.
Connect that to the fall of the Roman Empire.
Fall of the Roman Empire. Actually, there's a lot of lessons to be learned in the fall of the Roman Empire because it was a slow fall.
Yeah, it's there's a lot going on. Have you seen the little TikTok trend where the wife comes out and like asks the husband, "What do you know or think about the Roman Empire?" And the number of people that have like
Yeah.
deep thoughts on
Yeah.
how similar the Roman Empire and the fall of the Roman Empire, more specifically, the parallelism to the U.S. and where we're at.
The thing
There's
about
a lot. There's a lot of
of parallels. I mean, and the thing that a lot when people say, yeah, that's true. When people say
Yeah, but what is it?
when people say fall of the Roman Empire, sometimes I think people imagine it was this sudden fall, like
Oh no, it was a
it
gradual
was slow.
decline.
It took a couple hundred years or more, right? Which sounds a lot. Which means we've been falling since the beginning, basically, is what that means. Yeah. All right.
I like it.
Next time.
Faith,
Very
family,
good.
and freedom.
We're done. Es todo.